we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado. This is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
Welcome in, everybody, to episode 202 of Discussion Combustion Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Loco Plus. That's right, your local content creation.
Nationwide, awesome place for local creators. We run the Denver Loco Plus market. We've done live events for Loco Plus in Denver. You guys should totally check out the footage on that. That was episode 200 of Discussion Combustion. And we are also brought to you by, that's right, good old Bud Light, baby. Bud Light.
That's right, Art. Today's episode is also brought to you by Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. Get yourself a cold one. Join us here weekly on the show. Drink a beer with us. That's what we do, guys. Get yourself some Bud Light.
Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it cruising. We have an amazing episode tonight. Bring it in, baby.
Jaime, welcome to the show. Welcome to Discussion Combustion. So good to see you, man. Obviously, we're looking right behind you, seeing all these guitars. We got to talk a little bit of music here, but just wanted to welcome you to our program. Thanks for taking some time out to hang out with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it's fun because my good friend Clint Gershenson had made an introduction on LinkedIn. Do you know Clint from anywhere beyond?
I do.
Like, okay, how do you know Clint?
So Clint and I were in this this kind of like online. It's called the Alt MBA, and it's kind of like this online course held by this guy named Seth Godin, who, if you're like into marketing or advertising, he's a big sort of guru, and he put together this course called the Alt MBA, like the alternative MBA. And it's basically like a really compressed MBA program where you have to do a lot of writing, and Clint was in that, and he was in my group, and we just always hit it off, and we touch base every now and then. And, you know, he works in kind of agile, and I, you know, sort of pick his brain about how that system works and how I can apply it to what I do, which is a creative director. So just a really cool guy. We hit it off since then, and you know, we keep in touch from time to time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he's great at networking. I've known Clint since second grade. Since we were in second grade, I've known that man. And like, while we're on that subject, I'll just give him quick props to see somebody grow as much as he has and reach the level of success he has. It's really inspiring. So whenever I get a Clint referral, I always see that through.
All right, cool. That's a good, yeah, he's definitely a cool guy, driven, and we had a lot of fun during our class. You have to, like, you know, write these prompts, and you have to kind of critique each other and stuff. So he was just a great partner to have during all that.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's a hard worker. He's done a lot for us here at Discussion Combustion Podcast. Gives us a lot of great guest leads. So thanks, Clint, for you know, introducing us to Jaime here, and we're getting ready to dive into some topics, man. So creative director, let's talk about that, man. Let's dive into the juice.
Yeah, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything. I have a podcast called Confessions of a Creative Director, so I have a lot of confessions that I could share. But you tell me, what do you want to know?
Yeah, and we'll review our viewers and listeners to the show notes down below. We're going to include all that down there so you have a chance to give it a listen, to watch, what have you. Let's talk about how it all began, man. How'd you get into that? What are some of the ins and outs? What do I need to know?
Yeah, so I've been doing this this job for a long time. I grew up in Texas, in El Paso, and I, you know, started working in after I graduated from the University of Texas. I had a degree in radio, television, and film, and I moved back home to El Paso. I'm like, what am I going to do, right? So I started working in commercial production and film production, and any kind of local film that would come in, I would PA, you know, be a production assistant. And then somebody kind of pointed me in the direction of working for an ad agency. And so I'm like, that sounds kind of fun. So I immediately jumped into that and started, you know, it was funny, on my first day, I show up and I'd been hired to be like a copywriter, come up with, you know, write spots or billboards or whatever. Right. So I show up on my first day, it's a shoot. And my new boss is saying, like, talking to the camera guy, because we're shooting a spot for like a local car dealership. And she's asking the guy, like, where do you want Jaime to be? And I said, what do you mean? She's like, you're gonna be in the spot. So it was a very small operation, right? We had to wear a lot of different hats. Sometimes we had to be the talent. But so I started working there, you know, writing and producing all kinds of TV spots and radio. And I even learned how to produce jingles and write jingles. And then from there, as you can tell, I'm a musician. I had always wanted to pursue a career in music. So I picked up and moved to LA, and in pursuit of a music career, had a manager, had a band, the whole 9 yards.
You're still in LA.
I'm still in LA. Yeah, I'm in Long Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here after all those years. So I did that, put out a couple records, toured a little bit. All the meanwhile, time I kept kind of one foot in the whole advertising and marketing world. And I kept writing commercials and things like that. And at a certain point, when I realized, maybe the music thing's not going to take off, I got more serious about advertising and marketing. I worked at Time Warner for many years, writing and producing and directing spots there. And then one day I was like, you know what, I want to work with bigger clients. And so I applied for a job at an agency called Jack Morton Worldwide, and immediately started working with some big clients that I'm still working with. Some of them still today. Hyundai is one of them. Genesis. I worked on NBC Universal, Dish Network, Microsoft, Intel, all kinds of different clients. So worked for Jack Morton for a number of years, had the opportunity to start our own agency because of a conflict between a couple clients. Did that for about 7 years, then morphed into another agency, and then just most recently got moved over to another agency called Ocean, still working on Hyundai business mostly. And so, yeah, that's a quick snapshot of my my career.
So like a creative director is a very malleable job title by the sounds of it, right? Like it could mean different things at different times. You kind of jump in and solve problems where you need to in specific areas when it's necessary. So I find that interesting. For my day job, I'm like a branch ambassador, which is kind of similar. You do a lot of different things at the times that it's needed. You might only do that once. But to be a creative director, do you feel like your muse always needs to be flowing, or like, do you ever like have those days where you feel like, I know I need to get it done, but like I am missing the muse to come up with the creativity or the solution quickly? Have you ever like ran into stuff like that?
Well, I've done a lot of writing and talking about that particular subject. And I think that obviously there's times where you're more in the flow and you're more kind of inspired by the muse, so to speak. But I think that largely if you're a professional, right? If you want to be a pro, you sit down and you do the work and you write. And some days it's going to suck, right? And there was a famous writer, and I forget his name, that said that, I only write when the muse strikes me. Luckily, the muse strikes me every morning at 9 a.m. when I sit down to write. Right. Like, so it's really, in my opinion, it's about sitting down and doing the work. It's not always going to be great. It's not always going to be, your best work, but you got to sit down and do it like a professional. And oddly enough, I was listening to Tim Ferriss episode with Jerry Seinfeld, and you would think that Jerry is kind of like, he's a comedian. That guy sits down and writes for an hour every day, no matter what. And he talks a lot about that. It's like, there's no such thing as writer's block. You just get in there and you do the work, and then you walk away. Obviously he does a much different job than I do or that we do, but it was an interesting comment.
Yeah, I think it hits on, consistency, number one, and repetition being the mother of skill, right? We talk about that with guitar playing, which I'm excited to dive into some of that conversation, right? I played in a band for a while, the Ridge Runners here in Denver. And I'll tell you, man, I picked up my Martin off the wall the other night, and I was rusty as a son of a bitch. Callus are gone, buzzing chords, all this stuff. Guitar playing is like the biggest example, I think, of repetition being the mother of skill. You got to practice, you got to stay in rhythm, and you got to be consistent with it. And I think that applies to business, personal, professional, what have you. You got to full send at all times.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's it's like, if you want to be a professional, you got to act like a professional, right? And even if you're not, even if you're not necessarily planning on being a professional musician, but you have a really big interest in it, then you have to do those types of things. You got to practice. You got to, not that I'm really rusty right now too, so I feel you there. But it's just a matter of doing the work. There's no way around it. No matter what anybody says, there's the only way. You just got to go through it. You got to do the work.
We can spend 3 to 5 minutes on this subject because I know I'll get lost within this. But it is like a daily dedication, and it's it's a lifestyle change. Like when you really want to accomplish something and you really want to achieve it, it's usually going to take a year, maybe 2 years to accomplish, right? Like the big goals, those don't just happen overnight. Like it's not an overnight thing. And so
No.
you have to work at it every single day. Even when you don't want to, you still have to at least try. Like you might not have given it 100%, but you still gave it 80. You still gave it something that day. So the daily dedication is super important to whatever you're trying to accomplish. And I feel like that's important because, you know, you're a successful person. I see your book over your right shoulder. Looks great, man. You got a professional setup. You've obviously been working, and people can see where you're at now, and they can see your current success, and that's what they associate with you. But truly, you've been down this long road of, you know, fighting every day and staying consistent every day to get to where you're at. So what were some of the biggest hurdles that you had to get over, like, or biggest roadblocks that you hit on your journey?
I mean, I think that the biggest roadblocks are always sort of personal ones, right? And I talk about this a lot in the book, and this idea of fear, you know, the lizard brain, as I call it, as lots of people call it, but this thing that keeps you from doing stuff, right? That keeps you from saying, well, I'm not going to apply for that job. You know, I'm never going to get it. So, you know, back when I was at Time Warner, I was working on, you know, sometimes we'd be doing a car dealership, sometimes we'd be doing some local mom and pop, but I took pride in the spots that we were making. And even though we had a tiny fraction of a budget, they looked pretty good. And we would bring in talent, and we would create spots like you would see on national TV.
What do you mean by spots? Like a commercial?
Yeah, TV spot, TV commercial, right?
Okay.
And these were like local cable. It was cable advertising, right? So you can imagine. But we took a lot of pride in what we did, and we would shoot it, you know, as best we could. And they looked great. They were on a fraction of the budget. But at a certain point, you know, I was like, well, I want to work with bigger clients, right? And the fear, you know, there's a fear that keeps you from maybe applying somewhere because you're like, wow, they're not gonna like my work. They're gonna look at my work and see that I just did, you know, shitty local stuff, right? They're not gonna think. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps you from applying. And that's the kind of stuff that I fought through, right? Because I certainly had those feelings. But then I said, you know what? I know how to do this stuff. I've got the mechanics. So let me apply. Let me try to get through. And then you have to get through the next fear, right? It's like, oh shit, they want to talk to me. What am I going to do, right? And you go talk to them. In that particular case, they liked me, but I could tell that they were like, wow, this guy hasn't really done this kind of work before. And I said, hey, give me a test assignment. Give me an assignment that I can do and I can put together for you. And I'll come in and I'll pitch it to you and I'll show you that I can do it. And they were like, well, and this has kind of become commonplace now, but back in the day, they were probably like, well, shit, that's crazy. So they gave me a fake assignment for a car, like launch this new car. And I put together a proposal. I came in and pitched it and got the job. But so getting back to your original question, I think it's just, a lot of it has just been the fear, of
overcoming the fear,
of rejection. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Like you have, like in life, when you feel fulfilled, it's because you're doing things that are literally a challenge to you, that you question, you know, am I capable of doing this?
I mean, yeah. I think everyone asks themselves that questions at some point in time throughout the journey, right? As the challenges start to come in, like, can I take this on? Do I have the skills and abilities to be able to overcome this, right? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, you got to dig down deep. You got to get that grit. You got to get out of bed and full send it at all times.
I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, and no, it's tough. And, you know, obviously, like, not every day is going to be, you know, like you're killing it every day. But to your point earlier, it's about the consistency, right? Like you guys get up and you do that. I was looking at some of the episodes and I don't even know what number you're on. You're in the hundreds, I believe. That's consistency.
202.
That's like,
yeah,
202. I mean,
4 years, a little over 4 years.
That's amazing. That's like, I aspire to that. I'm just now going to be coming up on my 50th episode. And I'm sure there's some days where you're like, man, I'd rather just go to the bar. But you're doing it, and you know that people are depending on your show and want to see your show, and you just do it. So not all days are going to be the best, but I think over time, that consistency is what really sets a certain group of people apart from the others, right? There's a lot of people that will talk about that stuff. There's very few people that have done 200 podcasts.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and we're talking about a pretty saturated market, right? I mean, everyone's got a podcast at this point. It's 2023. I mean, we stepped into this market, there was still a little bit of wiggle room, especially here in Denver, Colorado, for some new opportunities. But I think we're kind of, saying the same thing. And that is to commit to it. You got to show up to it, whatever it is, whatever you sign and make an agreement to, a commitment to, you got to honor those commitments. And I think a lot of folks struggle with that. I think they're intimidated by commitments. And that's where we kind of see the cream rise to the top, whether it's professional, personal, whatever it is across the board. If you commit to something.
But here's the thing, even if you don't want to do it some days, like I'll use walking for an example, because ever since I got COVID a while back, I started walking daily to overcome being in quarantine. And so I've walked every day almost since, and it's changed my life. And even when it was blistering cold, it was like, -5, like you're about to get frostbite if you go outside. I'm like, well, it's time to go experience that. And even if you don't, so here's the thing, like if you don't want to do it, like you don't want to go work out, you don't want to do your drawing project, you don't want to write that paragraph in the book you're being an author to, whatever it is, no one's ever going to sit here and once you complete it and regret doing it. Like you never regret doing what you said you should do, and then you did it. I need to do my laundry today, and instead of letting it sit in the dryer for 5 days, I'm going to hang it immediately. Like stuff like that. Like once you hang it, you're never going to regret hanging it. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you have a commitment, you got to honor it. And even if you don't feel like it, you're still going to feel good after you complete it. Yeah. And it's that everyone fights that battle in their own way, whether it's like a diet or whatever it is. Right.
Yeah. You just gotta stick to the program. And I was listening to somebody else, right, and they were saying on the flip side of this, you also can't be so rigid that, for example, right, if you're like with the walking, right, let's say things happen, your schedule changes, right, and there are some people that use this as an excuse, like, well, I'm not going to have an hour to walk today, so I'm not going to do it. The person says, hey, that's going to happen. It's much better for you to go, I have 15 minutes. I'm going to walk 15 minutes and I can check it off my calendar and say that I did it. I wish I would have had more time, but I did it. Right. So there's also something to be said about you're still doing it, but maybe there's going to be some days where it's like, I don't have the full hour to work out. I don't have the full hour to write. Don't beat yourself up about it, because then, that might cause you to stop altogether. Right. So there's some days where you're just like, I'm just going to do what I can. But I checked it off. I marked it on the calendar and I did it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good advice for sure. I mean, I think everybody kind of approaches those things a little bit differently as far as what works for checking boxes daily. Art's he's pretty disciplined out of military style with his walks, right? It's become, but what they say, it takes like 28 days to develop like a habit and a new way of life, whether it's like dieting, exercise, whatever it is. It takes a little bit of time to get into that zone. And I would also include, playing guitar with that a little bit and segue it into music, because it's easy to get discouraged with music. It happened to me a lot when I picked up my Fender guitar was my first. And then I moved into the Martin category, but I had to consciously tell myself, Kev, I have to play right now. I know I don't want to, but I got to stay in rhythm if this is what I'm truly wanting to do. Right. Yeah. And I'm sure you can attest to that in some of your musicianship. And as I look at some of these things in the background here, I have many questions. First of all, is that a dobro right behind you?
It is. It is a dobro. Yeah.
That is badass. Yeah. Look at that. It's a resonator guitar dobro. That's pretty cool, man.
With like the steel on it.
Yeah. So that's like, so do you do any bluegrass or anything like that? Cause when I think dobro, I think bluegrass.
I can more, I would do more like a bluesy thing maybe. But not a bluegrass. That would be hard. I'd love to. I love all that kind of music, but that would be hard to do. So typically when I'm playing that thing, I'm like, dude, I'm looking for my slide here. Can't find it, but I'll typically do like some slide stuff on there.
What is going on in that junk drawer? I could hear you open it. I could hear like the wave of things.
There's like
we all have a drawer like that.
There's like a harmonica in here and all kinds of crap. But anyway,
I mean, that's a musician's drawer right there. You got harmonicas, you probably got capos in there, probably a bunch of Gator guitar picks,
Yeah.
So have you ever played in a band as well, or just kind of play for fun?
Yeah, you said you launched a couple records.
Oh Jesus! Sometimes, yeah.
That's all right.
How many records? How many records?
I've done 2 that are available out on Spotify and Apple Music and all that, and then I have one other one that I did that's kind of like out of print that I need to figure out a way to get online. And then that's my goal for this year. So last year was write the book. This year the goal is to do another recording. And during the pandemic, kind of getting back to like doing the work, I launched the podcast. So actually, let me start even further. That class that I was telling you about that I did with Clint, that really was like the impetus for a big shift in my life. Like it kind of like just flipped a switch on in me where I'm like, I'm a creator, right? I finally realized like, I gotta create, I gotta make stuff. And that's when I started the podcast. And then that's when I started a songwriting club with some friends of mine that are songwriters too. And we modeled it after this other hero of ours that does a song a week. So what we did is for that year of 2020, we wrote a song a week, right? Everybody would take turns picking a prompt, and then we would write a song about it. And you had to do like a little rough demo on your phone or on GarageBand or whatever. We would submit it, no critique. It was really just cheering each other on to do it. And so in that year, I wrote 52 songs. And so now what I'm trying to do is go through those 52 and pick out, the best 10 or whatever to make the new recording.
So composed music, did you write lyrics as well and record lyrics to these, or?
Yep.
How many verses, like what were they, like 3-minute long songs? Like they're all full length, like normal songs, or like?
There were a lot of them. Yeah. Were pretty much normal songs. I think I maybe did one instrumental, but a lot of them had, all of them, most of them had full lyrics, full, 3.5 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute songs, whatever it was, different styles. It really gave me an opportunity to branch out into the different styles that I had written in. Like I did some stuff that was kind of electronic, and I did this other one that's kind of freaky that I was using sort of like a auto tune on, that's just really strange. And the other thing that I did was, typically when I was writing previously, in my mind, I always want the songs to like make sense to the listener, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that would sometimes prompt me to like want to wrap up the song in some nice little bow, right? And what this songwriting thing did for me was it allowed me to kind of like write outside of myself, like more like a character, and maybe leave things in some cases more ambiguous. Or sometimes I would write things that I'm like, I don't really know what this means, but something's telling me to write it. And it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm just going to write it. And so it was really cool because I was able to sort of write almost like as another person, right? Or like through a character. Yeah. And that just opened up the floodgates because I was able to write a lot of different stuff.
So one of my favorite lyricists, I would say, is Tupac Shakur. And he did something similar. Like he mentioned that he would speak a lot of stories that he's heard. Like all the things he rapped about, or, had a poetic justice about, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Were not actually his stories. And what a cool outlet for telling stories and telling emotion is music, right? Because the instruments speak emotion, voice inflection, and obviously the words that you choose also speak emotion. And there's so many ways to express yourself. And it's fun because I love the 52, the 1 track a week challenge, because you kind of get into a rhythm when you make songs, right? Like okay, let me start here. And then you're kind of like stuck in your way. But if you're doing this weekly and you're like, I have to finish this song, then all of a sudden you start thinking out of the box a little bit. And then you realize there's more than one way to create music. There's more than one way to write a song.
Especially when you bring in collaborators, right? So, I mean, I'm sure you played with guys that have been in the business a long time. For me, like when I stepped into it, if it wasn't for the guys that I played with here in Denver that have been playing drums and bass and, lead guitar for years, I don't think I would have been able to hang with and write my own stuff. They kind of coached me a little bit, so that the collaboration piece, because it's interesting with music, right? You got a lot of folks that write their own stuff. Maybe they solo, whatever the case may be. But when you add in that band aspect, it's a whole nother thing. And I'm sure you can attest to some of that.
Yeah, I mean, working as writing as your own thing and then bringing it to a band, then that definitely changes. And I guess that what was interesting about about this writing challenge too was, again, we were in COVID, so I had to do everything right. And I'm like, I got to play the bass line, and I got to add a little keyboard. I don't play keyboard, but I can kind of eke out a little something. So you have to kind of do a lot of things.
I used to cheat with the keyboards. I had a piano for beginners, and I would like find the chords and just put them in there, record it real quick, loop it. Sorry, but that is fun though.
No, yeah.
Right?
Oh, it's absolutely fun. Like I'm a big, I love B3 organ, like that really kind of cool organ sound. And I can kind of find my way through chords, but I'm like, I don't know how to solo on here. So what I did was I would just mark all the keys that were in the scale. And I was able to eke out, fake these little solos, for keyboard or organ. And I'm like, okay, that conveys the idea. This doesn't have to be perfect. That was the other thing, right? They don't have to be perfect. I just got to get it done because everybody else submitted theirs. I got to get done. So there was that cool pressure also that kept you motivated.
I kind of like that a little bit. I like having deadlines, and I know I got to get this done by this time. It helps, because if my deadline's a week out, I'll get it done in a day and a half. Right. I just want to get out of the way. I don't like having those things, like whatever it is, whether it's writing my piece, whether it's recording my acoustic, piece, or doing my voiceovers, whatever it is. I want to get it done quick. I don't want to be waiting till the last minute. I don't like that. It gives me anxiety.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, you gotta get it done. I recommend that, man. If you're we've been talking about getting it going again, and it was hard, after that 1 year, everybody was like, all right, I'm done. Let's maybe do it in a couple years. Because it gets, it can
maybe
get
in a couple.
daunting.
It's never going to happen. Maybe in a couple.
No, it'll happen because I got to go through these songs and pick out this batch, and then for the next one, I'm going to need a whole new batch. I can send you guys a link to the all 52.
Jaime, one of my favorite things to hear is when I say something and someone tells me no. I'm like, I love that. Getting it done. So you don't know this about my co-host Kevin over here, but
here we go.
If you want to get this man to do something, like I've known him for 14 years and we've been through it all. And if you want to get this man to do something, all you have to do is tell him he can't do it. And then all of a sudden it's done.
Right. You can't do the songwriting thing, man. You can't. You just can't.
Well, we'll see about that now, won't we?
Don't try it. Don't attempt it at home.
Yeah, don't even try to redevelop your calluses.
I'll be up till 4 a.m. playing the Martin tonight, and I'll send you videos.
I love it. Do it.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, no.
So it's 2023. It sounded like you've been very busy since 2020. As all of us had to fill in our times, stay creative. But 2023 is upon us. The first quarter is almost already done. Surprisingly enough, it's cruising. What are some of your main goals within this year that you would like to either build on from last year or new goals that you're looking to accomplish?
Okay. All right. And this is good because I'm putting it out onto the world, and that just makes it more, real. And
all of the listeners will hold you accountable.
Yes. So get more consistent about the podcast. So I'm shooting for one a week. Right, because I've been slacking and doing maybe one every other week or one a month or every week. I've found somebody to help me cut them together and cut little snippets. So that means post the podcast, record the podcast, post it, do some little snippets every week. Then it's promoting the book, trying to add value to creative directors. So my whole MO with the book and with the podcast is to help the next generation of creative directors get to the next level, be really good at their craft, be really, kick-ass creative directors. So that's kind of my mission, right? So being more consistent about putting up content that's useful, here are some things you should be thinking about. Here are some books that I'm reading that might be helpful to you, being consistent about that kind of thing. The other thing that I'm working on right now, as a matter of fact, is doing the audio book version of my book. I tried to read it myself, and man, that was hard. So I just finally said I can't do it. I'm not liking the what it's coming out, so I'm going through Amazon to find a narrator for that. So get that done, and then hopefully record the new record. And I think that's it. In my mind, I would love to maybe update the book, but I think that's going to have to wait till next year.
Okay. So make the podcast weekly, drop records, get audio done for the book.
Yep.
I feel like I'm missing two other things that were like points to those points.
Just the consistency about promoting the book and creating content on LinkedIn for people.
Yeah,
for
finding a narrator, things like this. Like you can accomplish all this stuff within the next 3 to 4 months, and then what are you going to do with the rest of the year? Because that's the thing. Like when you're really out there getting it. And I'm just going to go ahead and be honest here, because I don't mind if my opinion hurts feelings, but most people don't do the bare minimum. Most people don't even check the bare minimum boxes in life, right? So if you can do the bare minimum and just a little bit beyond, just slightly beyond the bare minimum to get everything done, let alone actually pushing yourself, then you're going to outperform like 90% of people out there. And it's just wild to me. And so you have an ambitious year. I really do agree with what you're focusing on. I feel like all those things will have a great impact on people, right? Because you can't just do things for yourself all the time. You want to do something that is going to create momentum and a movement of sorts. And if you can really dial this in and balloon this creative director mentorship type of thing that you're kind of taking on here, imagine the impact overall. Like even if you could just change one person's career path and help them grow as an individual on their career path, like super satisfying, right? So I completely support everything that you're doing. One more main point as far as to the podcasting and being more consistent, hitting weekly. When we first started doing Discussion Combustion, we were dropping once every 2 weeks, right? So it wasn't super consistent. Sure, it was once every 2 weeks, but that's like enough time for people to forget, like, why am I even following this? And like, there's so much stuff that passes by within that time. Once we made the commitment to do it every single week, we record every single Wednesday, like we do tonight. It'll drop Thursdays as always.
Yeah.
That changed the game for us, Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like writing a song a week, doing a podcast a week, that consistency, people, like we talked about earlier, people kind of depend on it. They know it's coming out. It's definitely a commitment that, once you make it, it's like, okay, we're going all the way. And to your point too, about making snippets and all that stuff, it's probably my least favorite part of this business. I don't really like doing the promotion and the social media and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the value that it adds to your product, whatever it is tremendous. And so we have to be involved in that marketplace. I mean, it's just, that's where we're at in 2023, right? I'm sure you've utilized some of it, maybe marketing your book. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to know how that's going.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? It's like one of those things where, have you ever noticed, like, the car mechanic usually has the worst car, or the hairstylist usually has the worst hair, right? I'm realizing, like, man, I'm like a marketer, advertiser for a living, and I'm struggling to market my own stuff. And I think that's just kind of, is that maybe a little bit of that fear. But it gets tough. I mean, it gets tough to be consistent, right? Like getting back to those posts on LinkedIn, that's really how you get noticed and promote stuff, right? But as the individual, you're like, man, I'm posting again about this thing. People are going to get sick of me, or you start to second guess yourself. Like, maybe I won't do it today. I'll give people a break. But you have to remember that LinkedIn is so vast, and there's so many people on there that there might be people that don't see your stuff. Maybe they see it once. In your mind, you're thinking that you're bombarding people, but you just got to keep the machine going.
The thing is that at least if you're a broken record, at least you're broken on the right part, right? Like that's how I like to think about it, because I'm constantly repeating myself. We're always saying the same things in here. I mean, we 202 right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, how often have we covered the same subject and kind of just used a little bit of different verbiage? Like as long as you're consistent, that's the thing. And people respect it. And I do agree with that too, because we want to have a growth mentality and a success energy behind us. And we believe in ourselves to continue to grow listenership and people who are following us, and they need to get caught up. And, if we have long-term listeners, they're going to just kind of respect that, we're making sure everyone's on the same page here. Right. So you got to keep it up. And it is difficult to keep, because we are all our own worst critics. All of the cliches are true. As I'm, now 36, like, it's crazy over the past couple of years how I've realized, like, wow, all these cliches make a lot of sense and they're annoying at this point, but they're all true. And, you just gotta stick to your guns, and like, we gotta shut ourselves up sometimes and be like, no, I'm not listening to you in here. I'm actually going to continue to pursue this. Yeah, get that lizard brain out here. That thing needs to go sit on a rock and soak up some sun for the cold blood to warm up. It needs time to warm up.
Yeah, definitely. You can't listen to that voice, and it happens, but you gotta beat it back. And I write about that in the book, that it never quite goes away especially when you're a creative director, because people are looking to you, right, for the answers, and you can't know everything. You can't, if you did, you'd be a billionaire, right? And sometimes you start getting in your own head and you're like, well, man, maybe I don't know anything. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And so it's a constant struggle to try to beat back the lizard brain and keep it at bay,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to the podcast point, maybe rehashing some things. I mean, you said you're coming up on episode 50, maybe you're at that point. And I'm sure that, some of these conversations that you're having maybe touch on similar points week to week, just like we do here, right? Because not everybody's going to listen to all 50 or all 202 of Discussion Combustion, right? So it's, because I always think to myself, I'm like, man, we've already touched on this, but it's like, but if we have somebody new tuning in, maybe this information could be valuable to this viewer or listener. So, I think that's also something to keep in mind as we continue to move this ball forward with talking into microphones.
I try what I just did. I had a kind of a conscious shift, I guess late last year. And so, the first couple of years were sort of like profiles of creative directors, right? Other creative directors. And I had a series of questions that I would ask them, right? Like, talking about how they see the role, some ideas on process, challenges, things like that. And I thought it was great. But then at a certain point, I thought, well, I have access. I'm getting access to these amazing people. Like, I'm blown away at some of the people that I'm talking to. I mean, these are like legendary people, right? And I'm like, I need to figure out a way for them to share something actionable with the audience, right? So I kind of shifted some of the episodes, and I call those episodes Mastercast episodes. And in these episodes, the person is teaching something, right? And obviously you can't cover everything, and many of them have their own sort of courses and things. But for example, I had a guy named Ben Levy on, who's like a pitch and selling expert, right? Pitching ideas. And he did a masterclass where he broke down, like, here are the things that you're doing wrong, and here are the things you should be thinking about. And now all of a sudden, I've gone from profiling a creative director to like passing on this person's wisdom, and that is like super valuable for a young creative director to hear. Like, man, that's something that I can use on my next pitch. So I kind of
that's a great approach.
Yeah.
That is a great approach, because you are eliminating this. I mean, look, whenever we meet people that are recognizable to us, I guess I should say, there is that bit of a test, like, where I've looked up to this person and now I'm sharing a space with them. And so to take that approach that you have to, kind of put them as a teacher and really ask them something specific in order to understand their knowledge is a really good play. One thing that I do want to add to this, though, for your listeners and also the Discussion Combustion listeners, is one thing that's really helped me out as far as being a podcaster, also within my professional career, is to look at every, and I don't look at them at this point, but I recognize that every single person on this planet is my peer, right? So it doesn't matter if you make more money than me, you're my peer. It doesn't matter if your title says you're my manager, you're my peer. It doesn't matter if you make less money than me, or if you have alcohol issues, whatever. Like everyone is my peer until you disrespect me, and then you're no longer my peer. But that kind of mentality has really helped me personally to feel comfortable having personal conversations with people, to where I'm not nervous anymore. Like, you're my equal across the table. You're my equal through Zoom. And like, you've accomplished a lot of great things and things I haven't done yet, but that doesn't make anybody better than anybody else. And
No,
I think that's super
I agree.
important to kind of put that out there and remind, because anyone who's extremely successful, they have to be a little bit humble as well to be that successful. And they also just want to be your peer. They don't want you to idolize them. Like, they want you to look at them like, they're just like anybody else that you look at. And so with both of those things combined, being strategic on the talking points and kind of delivering this educational piece, but also if you can, incorporate that just personally to look at people like they're your peers, I feel like that's super important as far as, the success we've seen, and just in general, you can use that in any situation, dating, jobs, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a good mentality to keep, because I think a lot of times, we sometimes feel like, well, I don't belong here, right? And I tell this to young people, right? They feel like, especially if you're, of another background, or you're another ethnicity or something, and you feel like, well, I shouldn't be here. It's like, yeah, you can be here. You can be at this table. You have to participate, and you have to, add value, but you can be anywhere you want to go. And I tell people that, it's like, you can go wherever you want to go, and you can figure out how to get a seat at the table, right? There shouldn't be, doesn't mean you're going to rise to the top, but doesn't mean that you can't try, and that you can't, be part of the conversation, I guess, so to speak, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I agree with you. And I've been really, really shocked and about how generous people are. Like, again, some of these people that I've spoken to on a whim, right? I've been like, I'm just going to ask. And they were like, absolutely. And some of them were like, oh yeah, I've heard your show, or you had a friend of mine on there. And, for them to give up an hour of their time, I mean, that's a big deal. And I've just been surprised by the generosity, much less the generosity to share their, some of their secret sauce. That's a whole other story. But people are, I find that for the most part, especially the people that are really successful, are generous. They are kind. And they just want to, share what they know with people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, my experience is I would say that's kind of textbook of how it goes, right? Once you have some knowledge, I think a lot of people like to share that with other folks, and that's kind of cool about what, this book that you wrote, right? I haven't dove into the pages yet, but correct me if I'm wrong. The name is What's the Big Idea? Is that the name of the book?
Yeah. Yeah. It's called What's the Big Idea? An Indispensable Guide to Becoming a Kick-Ass Creative Director.
I'm gonna have to flip through those pages and see the juice.
I'll send you guys a couple copies of these so you could check it out.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of people have said they've had, that it's been relevant in whatever they do. So I'd be curious to know if you guys find it helpful. But yeah,
I mean,
man, I'm just trying to do my
about
part.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, and what you're doing, I can tell you have an authentic energy and that you're genuine. Okay. And look, I also think that everyone has a sixth sense, and that's intuition. And if you have to listen to it for it to work, right? And I like to look at my subconscious like it's my partner in success. This thing helps me succeed. That's my intuition. And I can tell what you're about, what you're looking to accomplish. Sure, we all need to get paid. We need to feel comfortable. We need to make money to live in a society. So of course, services cost money, things cost money. But you're making it worth it by what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish is bigger than yourself. And that's what we want to do here at Discussion Combustion too. Just a little background for you, like our mission statements to include anybody and everybody from all walks of life. So it doesn't matter who you are. And we want to be critical. That way we could ask tough questions, but we're also going to be accepting and loving. So we're not putting people in a corner. We might disagree with your opinion, but we're not that kind of podcast where we want that shock value. It's really about bringing the lost art of having a conversation, like putting down ourselves. Like, sure, we're communicating over Zoom right now, but same conversation in person, we'd be having a great time. And it's important to get into these type of things where you're doing active listening. You are really being intentful with how you're having a communication with somebody, because you don't know, like if you have a conversation with somebody, let's say you're in college and, you know, you meet somebody in a library and you just, you know, have a little conversation. What if they haven't had a conversation with somebody in like 3 months and they were yearning this? And then all of a sudden you speaking to them and being genuine and heartfelt, you know, it means something. So I feel like that's what we're trying to accomplish here, Kev. I mean,
I think you summed it up great. I mean, that's kind of the mission statement, right? We're all talking about, you know, writing books, doing success, doing podcasting, just trying to get the message out to the people, right? And there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah. I think the art of, I love that you mentioned, you know, kind of the art of conversation. And I think what's also missing is like intentional conversation, right? So I jokingly, you know, I have a pretty close group of friends, and we started doing this thing. We haven't done it in a while, so this is a note to get it back going. But we called it a salon, right? Because apparently the word salon also means back in the day, you know, when a group of people would get together to discuss something, right?
Salon.
And so salon.
Like a hair salon. Oh, okay.
That's but it has a different, older meaning. I didn't know this. It's kind of like getting together in a parlor, kind of, right? And obviously back in the day, it was more geared towards the men, right? The men are getting together to discuss something. But anyway, so I started calling it that. And what was great about that is that it gave it kind of like a shape. And I'd be like, hey, salon, you know, we're going to do a salon. We're going to get together at so-and-so place, drink some beers, and we're going to talk about this. And we would like put a topic out there, right? And sometimes it started off as a joke, but it was, you know, a lot of them are musicians. So a lot of times we would get together and talk about some new piece of music or something that we read about or whatever. But there was something interesting about giving the conversation a purpose, right? And I think that, I don't know, I feel like it would be something more people would want to do, right? Because obviously you can get together and just chat. But when you come in with like, hey, I read this book, I think that's why book clubs are so popular, right? But it's like, hey, let's talk about the book, or hey, are you watching this show? Like, what did you think about that? Or why did that happen? Or, you know, whatever it might be. But yeah, salon, kind of a cool concept.
I wonder if that term then, like, did that affect how we came up with saloons, right? So we have a salon, a saloon, right? Guys would get together, you know, they'd ride their horses into town, grab a pint with your mates, do some talking, right? At the saloon,
Maybe.
the swinging doors.
Maybe so. Yeah, I'm not sure where it came up. But there was a magazine that was called Salon that was kind of like a intellectual magazine back in the day, if I remember correctly. But
interesting. Yeah. Maybe a segment we need to bring back to Discussion Combustion is the word of the week. Word of the week.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of those.
And the word of the week this week is salon.
Salon. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, we used to have some good ones too. We used to do like a would you rather, but after like 130 something episodes,
we ran out.
And I would come up with like, because you can't just go to the internet for these would you rathers every single week. Like, it's boring. So like you have to go search your guest, like what are they doing, what are they into, and then you come up with a would you rather, a custom would you rather on the guest. And maybe we should bring, you know, we could bring some that's another fun thing with podcasting is even though you can be, you know, this free flow conversation, then you're like, wait, hold on, wait a minute, we have a word of the week that we have to present, and just something silly like that. Get people engaged, and that way you can get people to like, hey, what's your word that you would like to be the word of the week, you know? And I feel like that's one area we've been kind of slacking recently is like, you know, getting people engaged. Like, what do you want us to talk about? Or, you know, is there a specific, you know, subject or there's a lot. That's what's interesting about it is it's free flow. There's so many different ways to attack it and engage people. It's like, which way do you do? Like, how long do you do that? Do you want to change it after a couple of weeks? Like,
and you can, you know, going back to the creative piece, right? And I'm sure you can speak to this, Jaime, pretty well is, you know, we're not a manager of our life, we're a creator of it. And that includes, you know, whether that's music, podcasting, careers, what have you. We can create things at any moment, right? So there is no rules. And I think that's what's great about kind of having the rights to your content, right? There's certain guidelines. If you're on different platforms, you got to check some boxes, but we can create new segments, new ideas at any moment. I think that's what's cool about it, because this is a business that continues to innovate and evolve weekly. You know, we're in 23 now. I mean, this is where talk radio is heading. This is where entertainment's heading. It's unreal.
Yeah. You just triggered a thought, right? And it was, I don't know, you guys are Rick Rubin fans, but his new book, I think it's called A Creative Act. Man, it's fantastic. And it just kind of gives you some things to think about in terms of creativity. And he starts off the book by saying, we're all creative. We're all, if you're stuck in traffic and you took an off ramp and figured out a different way to get home, you just created something. If you, like, we're all creative people. And he talks about, sort of like that there's this conveyor belt of interesting and creative things that are just right in front of you. You just have to be sort of willing to listen to them and pick them out. But I highly recommend that book. But I agree that it's just like, everyone's a creator. How can you create stuff, that's gonna make you feel more fulfilled? And that's really what it's about, right? Like a lot of the stuff we're creating, yes, for other people, but we get, and at least I get so much satisfaction from just hitting that button. I'm like, I made something. I made a podcast. I made a song.
Oh, it's so fun every week.
It's just like,
it's unreal. I mean, it's definitely that true dopamine adrenaline dump, if you will. Whether that when I was playing in the band, whether I was doing podcasting every week, I look forward to it. We all got to check the boxes, whether that's the family life, whether it's the day job. All those things are all well and good and they can add some value. But when you can sit down and really do something that like brings you that sense of fulfillment and joy and that enlightenment every single week, there's just no greater feeling, and I know a lot of people struggle to find what that is for them, but I would encourage people to just focus on it. What brings you that feeling?
Well, I mean,
it makes you a better person.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, no. Through, overcoming adversity and overcoming self-doubt and sticking to your fucking guns. Yeah, it does make a better person and it's important. And so I like this conversation because it's taking a natural full circle, right? Like in the beginning, we're talking about, how you have to stick to it. You got to keep going, even if the times are hard, how it's satisfying when even if you want to walk an hour, but you just do 15 minutes, like you still did something. So I like how it's kind of coming full circle on the conversation that we're having. And one really important question that we like to ask all of our guests here whenever they join Discussion Combustion is, Jaime, if you can give one piece of advice to all of humanity across the entire world so everyone can be better tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, I hate to sound, repeat stuff, but if I had to say, it really is about getting over those self fears. I'm when you were talking earlier that you're 36, and I love that because I just had that kind of moment. Up to this point I'd done well, right? But it was at that moment when I was about to turn 50 that it finally flipped, that little switch finally flipped. And I said, I got to get out of my own head and just start doing stuff and just start making stuff. Who says that I should be making a podcast for creative directors, right? I'm not the top creative director in the world. And then I just said, fuck it. I have things that I want to share that I can't share. So what's stopping me? So I think if I really had to pinpoint it, it's that whole idea of just getting over those self fears, because that's what keeps people from achieving great things. You're 36. I mean, think about how much more you already accomplished all this stuff. If you keep on that path, right? What's the next thing that you're going to get? What's the next fear that you're going to get over? And where's that going to take you? And you're just constantly growing. I think I really honestly, with all my heart, believe that it's that fear stuff, that internal fear that keeps a lot of people from doing great things. So that would be my one big billboard. Fuck the lizard brain.
I completely agree with that.
Hashtag fuck the lizard brain. Full send. Yeah. Get rid of the fears. I like it. That was a good approach.
Great approach. This is not new to the Discussion Combustion listenership, but maybe new to your listenership, and something that ties in completely with what you're talking about. And I don't know if you've heard about this. It's like a 3 to 5 second rule of intuition and consciousness. Are you somewhat familiar?
No.
With so, like we were talking earlier, the sixth sense is our intuition. It knows what we should do, It tells us what we should do, and it's the right thing to do. However, what our intuition tells us might not be the easiest thing to accomplish. It might be a very difficult, tall task, right? It's gut wrenching. It's challenging. We question if we're even capable of doing it, but yet our subconscious just gave us this whole thought process. And so there's this 3 to 5 second period from when our intuition tells us what we should do, which is 99% of the time, 100% correct, if that makes sense. Before our conscious mind tries to convince us to not do it. And the conscious mind that's where complacency derives from. It wants, you've earned this, like, you can relax a little bit. Like, you've worked so hard, you can take your foot off. You don't need to do those 20 push-ups right now, or you don't have to make that sales call right now. Like, that's all conscious thought. And so there's this 3 to 5 second period where our intuition tells us what we need to do. And when our conscious mind tries to convince us that we don't need to do it. And so it's been probably coming up on a year now, Kev, or longer, since I've been truly, really trying to like live within that 3 to 5 seconds. Like, life is just 3 to 5 seconds with me all the time now, where I got my ears perked open like a bat with echo sound. And I'm like, just waiting to hear the intuition tell me something that I need to do. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, since I don't want to, I guess that's what I need to do.
It's now or never.
And it totally feeds into what you're talking about too. And overcoming the fear, overcoming the complacency mindset, and really tapping into challenging yourself. And, the end goal is when we're all on our deathbeds, or we know we're going to die, and that split second before we're gone and we know we're about to be gone, like, we're going to think about everything, right? So if you can look back at life and be like, you know what, I accepted every challenge and I didn't allow fear to control my direction, like, that's dying happy in my mind.
Yeah.
So I know that's a lot to unpack there, but it's important. It's important.
Yeah. One thing that I don't know that I've mentioned, and I think it's, like you're saying, sort of intuitive, but that lizard brain, that fear is there. There's a reason for it, right? And the lizard brain, especially, right? That's kind of a remnant of back when we were cave people, and those feelings kept you from going outside the cave, right? And get eaten by a tiger. They're meant to protect you, right? So in the modern age, these fears are meant to protect you from getting hurt. In that case, in this day and age, it's like, well, I don't want to speak up in this meeting and pitch this idea because they may laugh at me, and that's going to hurt my feelings, or that's going to hurt my chances of getting a promotion, or whatever it is. It's there for a reason. It's trying to protect you, but most of the time, it's hurting you because it's protecting you from things that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be causing you any fear. So it's just kind of important to remember, like, why that's there. And it's like, thanks, I heard you, lizard brain, but I'm okay. I think I can share this idea without too much fear of ridicule, or that people are going to laugh at me or whatever. If that makes any sense. But
makes a lot of sense. No, I think that's a great way to sum it up. A lot of good words there for the people. I'll say, fuck fear, drink beer. Thanks, Bud Light, for sponsoring this program. We certainly appreciate you. And before we get you out of here, man, because I know you got some dad duties and some things to do. Tell our listeners, tell our viewers, man, we want to bring you as much as we can. Where do they go to find you? Where do they get involved? What do they need to know?
Okay. First things first, I think go to my website, which is Jaime Cabrera creative.com, and that's spelled JAIME CABRERA creative.com. That's kind of the hub where you can find anything from, like, I have links to my music, I have links to the podcast, I have a link to the book, and then I also have a link for setting up coaching, one-on-one coaching, if you're interested if you're a creative director and want a little creative director therapy, a little coaching, mentorship. I even do a 20-minute, free consultation if anybody wants to just chat. I love chatting with people, and I'm willing to help anybody, really. So they can go there. And then I need to get better about putting stuff out on the other socials, but I'm really active on LinkedIn. That's usually where I'm posting the podcast. That's where I'm posting little bits and tips and tricks and things like that on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, you can just search for me, Jaime Cabrera. You should be able to find me. And then on Instagram, I'm at What Is the Big Idea? That's the only other one that I'm somewhat consistent with, but really LinkedIn is it's sort of my home, because that's where all the people are that I'm trying to reach, or a lot of them are. What else? And then obviously, if you want to pick up the book, you can go straight to Amazon and pick that up. It's available at Barnes & Noble and anywhere else that books are sold. But yeah, I'd love people to subscribe.
Coming to audio this year.
Soon, I hope. It's funny. I'll just share a story with you. By the way, the mechanics of putting a book out into the world are so easy. If you guys should be collecting all this stuff that you're talking about and thinking about how to turn it into a book. If you had a manuscript, or you had like something written down, and you even if you didn't have a cover, you could go into the Amazon Kindle publishing system, upload that manuscript. They would even help you like figure out a little cover for it. You could be selling your book tomorrow. And I'm not even kidding you. The mechanics and the platforms are so easy now. Same thing with the audiobook, right? So initially I was going to record the audio, upload it. I'm like, I can't do that. They have another kind of group that's part of the Amazon family called ACX. You post up a part of your book, people audition to be the narrator for that. And you select one, you pay, an agreed upon price, and they record it for you and you upload it, and then you're in business. So I had found one that I really liked, and the voice was really cutting and it was really interesting, but it also sounded kind of weird. I'm like, is this like a voice, like a text to voice thing? And the person wouldn't answer me, right? But I was listening, and I'm like, this sounds really good, but there's certain words that are weird and like certain cadences. And
can you get them on a phone call at least? Can you be like, hey, yeah, because I would want a phone number of like, hey man, just let me talk to you for a minute, and like I want to hear how you sound.
This person was called this should have been my clue, the narration nomad. And as I was going through the process, I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot because I really like the voice. It's really intriguing, and the price was right and everything. And so the first part is they like send you a 15-minute check-in, right? That has the first 15 minutes of the book, and you got to approve it or whatever. And then the person just falls off the radar, and I'm trying to I want to get this thing out, and I can't track this person down. And I gave them like this whole guide on how to pronounce things, and they're not really listening to it. Long story short, I can't get a hold of this person. And I finally, sent the note like, hey, what, I think it was like a voice to text kind of thing. So I just dissolved that, and now I'm looking for a new voice. Anyway, long story short, but the point is, if you want to put stuff out in the world now, you can't be living at a better time. It's so easy. You can make anything. You can cut videos online without having a fancy computer. I mean, this is the era for people to create. So we should all be creating as much as possible.
Well, we're going to completely support everything that you do. You're in our wheelhouse. I mean, one of my best friends from second grade. So
he just wrote to me, by the way, because I sent him a note on LinkedIn. I'm like, I'm about to do the show. And he's like, I can't wait to hear it.
No, he's excited. He's excited. So any way that Discussion Combustion can help, we will help you. We can't wait to see your personal growth and your sustained growth, I should say, and how you're going to help so many creative directors. We would like to help you on that journey as much as we can. It's an honor talking to you, getting to know you. Maybe sometime you and Kev could play some guitars together or something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Look, then, we're all about repeat guests. So when you come out to Denver, Colorado, maybe bring one of your best axes. I'll bring the Martin. We'll jam. We're going to do a live jam sesh on Discussion Combustion on the next go.
We'll use this camera for that one.
Yeah, we'll use this camera for that one, so we can rip tater chip. Be fun, man. Come on out to Denver. Let's have some fun. We'll get you in the seat.
I love it. I was just there last year. I took my kid down there to the Meow Wolf exhibit. We had a blast. So, and I have friends there. So absolutely, I'd love that.
Well, that's what we have to look forward to, man. So we'll go ahead and get out of here with this. Obviously, a lot of great things. We're going to include a lot of that in show notes down below. You're going to want to get in touch for sure. Get involved. We're going to full send it. You know how we do, Art.
Everyone out there that's listening or viewing the program, please be good to yourselves.
You know you deserve it. And thanks again, Jaime, for being here. Good to see you, my brother.
Thank you guys. Take care. See you next time.